it was originally a grist mill. It was built in 1752. So the foundation of the hatches and all their houses and the mill and the ponds are still there, but it's like they're buried under all the new houses and all the new Burger King and strip malls and stuff. But it's still there. And so that's why it's important to preserve it.
Historical place.
Well, it's strong. I mean, like, it's a fact. So, I mean, you can't really, I mean, I don't get it. Like, maybe they mean it's not important for history. I mean, that depends, you know. I don't know. No one died there that I know of, but somebody cut his hand off there. I mean, maybe you should tell that story and then people will be interested because it's gory. Yeah, a guy just like he was drunk. He just put his hand down on the saw and it just cut right through his hand. Disgusting.
That makes it a story.
Like, you could like do a shot of that in the movie with like blood coming out. You could start with that.
Change to an R-rated film.
Right. Then people will be really interested. You could call it like Sawed Off Hand Mill. I think that we could change the name.
That would be awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's just change the whole project.
Yeah, or you could like also be an advertisement for not drinking while you're working in it with a saw. Like, that would be a good advertisement. So
When we sell the rights to Hollywood.
yeah, like you need to start with that. Like, it was a cold day, had one too many drinks, wasn't paying attention. Wow!
It's going to win us our competition right there.
Right. Yeah, I think most people think about themselves and their own life, which isn't, I mean, I think everybody thinks that. And so, for me, it's easy to think about the past because I grew up in a really old house. And I think people who grew up in a more modern house with a more modern job, more modern life, and they're not going to think about that. They're going to drive by the mill every day and not notice it. I mean, I think that's why making it a museum or like just a monument in the town is really important, to like call attention to it. That's why like physical history is important, you know, to be able to go to the place and see it. But yeah, I just think I guess people don't want to think about their past or the past. You know, I can understand that.
But like you said, it's really cool. Living history type of thing. It is really like Plymouth Plantation. Like,
I always like to think about like, I think what it is like you put yourself in that place and then you think, I think people don't think that people in the past had feelings and they never had sex and they just were like, you know, they never got mad or were passionate about anything. So I think when you're put in a place where you're like, okay, here's where they worked. Oh, they worked, those people in the past, you know, and that's what's neat, is to think about then you start thinking about larger things and with humanity. Like, everyone's really the same.
it's true, yeah.
So,
Good.
okay.
So first off, if you could just state your name and who you are.
Ronald J. Messer. My wife and I are the owners of the Red House since 1965, and we bought it from the Hatch family that originally built it in 1647. There's some controversy whether it's 46 or 47, but
So if you could just talk about, as much as you know, the history of the mill in this area.
well, as you know, that the shipbuilding industry on the North River was so important up until 1870, and that's when the last boat was launched in Norwell. It's the Helen M. Foster, and there were many shipbuilding yards up and down the river on both sides. Columbia was built there, and my hobby being wood carving, the sign on the barn there is Red House, which I carved, and I actually got the plans from the Helen Foster, and that's a exact replica, half model of it, and I got them from Frank Clay, who was a great historian down the street. And so much of the lumber that was used there was milled here, and he originally, the forests here were hardwood, and almost all the hardwood was gone, and now it's mainly just all pine, which really is not used that much in shipbuilding. So it's more oak. And so, but I can remember when we first bought the Red House in '65. The mill was then operating still, and Decker Hatch was then in his 90s, and still a bit of a lecherous old man, but he was noted for pinching ladies' bottoms, which was really, and several times a couple ladies threatened to tell his wife, and he said, "No, don't do that. She would not like that." So he was a character. He really was. But we actually bought wood from him, and it was really quite a sight when you could see that the saw going and everything whirling, and the pond slowly going down, and then you let it fill up the next day and do it again. It's absolutely amazing. And that was only for several years until he died, and then there was no more doing at the mill. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is that Dick Hatch, who we bought the house from, who was obviously related, but as so many of the Hatches were related, they didn't even speak to each other, some of them. And he had a running battle with Decker, in that the lane going through here, we have a land-corded right-of-way through. We have right-of-way through this lane, that lane, and one over here. And Dick Hatch, we used to use that lane a lot because he liked to go by the mill. And he and Decker got in a fight one time, and so Decker cut down a great big tree across the lane, and he couldn't get by it anymore. Dick Hatch was absolutely out of his mind. And so he got his lawyer up, and they went to the town council, and apparently they threatened him, and he had to cut the tree and open up the lane again. So, but that was one of the great Decker stories. But the mill was actually, when it went up for sale and was bought originally by Bob Reed, for $5,000. I was going to buy it just to keep it from somebody tearing it down. But we didn't have $5,000 then, and we were having a hard time paying for this house. So, and I think that I have very, very fond memories of the mill, and the thing is that it's the only one left. There were 4 Hatch mills, and that's the only one that's left. So I think anything we can do to save it is certainly well worthwhile.
Now, if you could note a couple major changes, I think, from when you first bought this house, and the land around here in Marshfield and things like that, would that be a positive change, or do you wish that, do you miss the way things used to be? And not that it's changed that much, but do you get what I'm saying?
Well, my philosophy is I'd do anything to keep any development from coming here. I would like to keep things the way they are. I mean, there's a Hatch house here, 2 miles of Hatch house, the end of the lane is a Hatch house, and this is a Hatch house, and the Mounts property was a Hatch house, and that burned down around 1900, I think, and they replaced it, but still was a Hatch homestead. And what we were trying to do in the 1970 was I wanted to preserve all that land over at the Mounts property that was going down to Blueberry Island. And so I was going to buy it, okay, and just to keep somebody from building on it. And then we had the fire here in 1971. We almost lost the whole house and our family, but I mean, so we could not financially afford to do that. So I went to the town and I had the town buy it, okay, and make it conservation land. So I don't really care who owned it as long as nobody could build on it. And so, and then this last year, 25 acres of our land on the North River, which is about a quarter of a mile with an island, we sold to the Conservation Commission so that no one can ever, build on that either. So I like things just the way they are.
So Sarah was saying that, like the Plymouth Plantation and things like that, they want to. She thinks it's a great idea that they want to make the mill into a museum and, bring kids down here for classes and show them the mill and the way things used to work. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's wonderful. It's our whole family's real history buffs, and I think that I love history, and I don't particularly care the way things are going now. In some respects, I dream sometimes of living back in those days, and but we spent our lifetime restoring and improving this property, the Red House, and trying to not change it, but just make it even better, and change it in a positive way. And we have a home in Vermont that is on the National Historic Registry, and this will be on the National Registry probably within the next year or two. And when we bought that property 35 years ago, everybody was afraid that we were going to change it. Well, all we did was just make it even better, and so that's what we tried to do here. So.
Like you said that you're not very happy with the way things are going right now. Do you think history is a great way for the next generation to learn how to improve things?
Absolutely. I think, you have to learn in a positive way from history. And being a doctor, I mean, I know if you look back, and if, when I started medical school, we knew that smoking caused lung cancer, but there was no great publication of this and no one really pushing it. And right now, for example, smoking has to be one of the worst, medically speaking, diseases that creating diseases that we know from. And so, but back 100 years ago, I mean, nobody knew anything about that at all, and they probably didn't live long enough to die of lung cancer anyway. But you really, I think there's so much in history that you look back on and says, why did you think of all the wars and everything that go on? Why did we do this? It's just, I mean, why are we at war now? I mean, it's just, there's nothing like peace.
This place is very peaceful.
Yeah. Dick Hatch, one of the reasons they asked him, why did you sell the property and not keep it in the family? And his oldest son, wanted the property. And the will says it has to be handed down to the oldest son, which we have the will but that's Old English law, which is only good for 200 years. And so he said, if my son wants it, he can buy it. He would even give him a discount. Well, he couldn't afford to buy it. So there was some movement in Marshfield to try to get money up so that it could stay in the Hatch family, but there wasn't any support of that. So we bought it, and it's. But you know, if you look at the historical documents that we have in the house, it's absolutely amazing. We have all the original Bibles and genealogies going back to 1701. We have the wills. We have all the personal letters. And Sarah has spent, months going through all these, and she knows them better than I do. But it's the other reason Dick Hatch, which is not a reason I don't think at all, that he wanted to sell the house, is because they built Route 3, and he could hear the cars. And he liked my oldest daughter, Kim, very much. And she said to him, she says, if you just sit back and listen, just think of it as a waterfall. Which I thought was really, really great. And it doesn't bother us at all. Yeah.
So before we end, this is really great, by the way. Before we end, anything that you, if there are any words that you want to say about people trying to restore the mill and trying to keep this the way that it is?
I would be devastated if that mill wasn't restored and kept. Really, there's so many positives, and I don't think there are any negatives. Except we got to come up with the money. But that's the only thing. But I think it's on the right track, and we got the roof on, so that's going to save it from really going down. And I think what Roy Kirby has done is amazing, and I think what he's got planned is amazing, and we're just in full support of it, and I know our neighbors are too. So.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
The way that I came across the Hatch Mill, I'll never forget this, was I came across a little brochure like this that the Historical Commission gives out in Marshfield. And in the brochure, there was all the unique sites, and one of them was the Hatch Mill off of Union Street.
3.5 years ago, Roy Kirby, who's the driving force of the Hatch Mill project, approached myself and my brother about assisting him in trying to get some action taken to help restore and preserve the mill. We did a tour of the property and found it in deplorable condition, actually almost ready to collapse.
So I talked to the chief of police in town, and I said to him that, hey, how do I go and approach these people about maybe putting in a woodworking shop there?
We met with the Historical Society who owned it at that time 2 or 3 times and expressed our interest in it. They decided and voted to turn the place over to us. So we purchased it in 2004.
Decker Hatch's vision back in 1957, there was an article in the Boston Herald, and he stated that he wanted the upstairs in the box mill to be used as a museum.
I can remember when we first bought the Red House in '65, and we bought it from the Hatch family that originally built it in 1647.
The Hatches built the mill, and that was their main source of livelihood. It was originally a grist mill. It was built in 1752, so for me, my research was really a lot about the mill because I was trying to write something about what, you know, everyday life was like living in the house, and of course, when they went to work, they'd go to work in the mill. And then in the 1800s, Deacon Joel Hatch ran the mill for a while, and he changed the mill from a grist mill into a sawmill.
It was really quite a sight when you could see that the saw going and everything whirling. The pond slowly going down, and then you let it fill up the next day and do it again. It's absolutely amazing.
He added that little side onto the mill. Originally it was just the square part, and then there's this little shed side. That was a sawmill, and he put this sort of up and down saw in there and planed boards, and people thought that he was really stupid to do that because the shipping industry was sort of dying.
Originally, the forests here were hardwood, and almost all the hardwood is gone. And now it's mainly just all pine, which really is not used that much in shipbuilding.
But he made a really good business out of it. And then I think during the Civil War, they made boxes for boots for soldiers, the little wooden boxes that they'd ship the boots to them down in the South. So it was used for lots of different things. And I think it was used as a sawmill up through the 50s with Decker Hatch.
We actually bought wood from him, and that was only for several years until he died, and there was no more doing at the mill.
My name is Michael Burry. I come from Plymouth, Massachusetts. I'm a preservation carpenter. Part of the aspect that we're in is preservation carpentry. It's preservation, restoration, conservation of existing structures that have the American history involved in it.
We have a limited amount of energy and strength in our lives, and we only want to invest that when we're dealing with partners that have a high level of enthusiasm.
We're dealing with two buildings here really, and the machinery, kind of three main components.
Each building that you look at has the conversion techniques of the logs, how the log is taken and either hewn or sawn, or how it's converted into usable building materials.
This is more complicated than just fixing somebody's house up because you've got all those machinery issues in the basement.
So when we look at a building like the Hatch Mill, the sawmill portion has a different construction technique than the box mill because there are two different periods of time.
You come into them at first and you're completely overwhelmed. Everything looks very complex, and you're trying to figure out what's going on where.
There's certainly a lot of damage to the building that needs to be repaired. The whole front wall that faces the pond needs to be replaced. There's a lot of jacking involved where you have to lift the building back up into position. You've got to support a lot of things while you're working on the front wall.
But you start spending a little time in the building and just open yourself up to it. It breaks itself down into a set of simple parts and simple steps, and that's the only way I'm able to attack a project like that, is to let it kind of settle out and simplify itself in my mind, and then go one step at a time, keeping the big picture in mind. You think about history and the way we learn about history. When we read something in a history book, we're reading some outside person's idea of what happened. But when you go into a building like this, there's no fooling you. There's no lies in there. You know, you're seeing exactly what happened.
I can only imagine when we go down the road 10, 15 years from now that Hatch Mill will be an exciting example that will inspire all other citizens.
I think people don't think that people in the past had feelings. They never got mad or were passionate about anything. So I think when you're put in a place where you're like, okay, here's where they worked. Oh, they worked, those people in the past.
So it's quite a bit involved, but it's not, you know, they move lighthouses, brick lighthouses, so, you know, if that can be done, this is certainly well within the, you know, ability of everyone to do.
I would be devastated if that mill wasn't restored and kept, really. There's so many positives, and I don't think there are any negatives, except we've got to come up with the money. But, you know, that's the only thing.